They don't move, they're just quiet and still. So we can follow them as we try to put up with this hot weather. The subject this morning, perfect health through yoga. Perfect health through yoga. What is perfect health? What does perfect health mean to you? Perfect health means that the body, the mind, and the soul express God in a perfect way. And so perfect health does not mean health of the body only. It must be health of the body, of the mind, and of the soul. Now, through yoga, yoga must be a wonderful thing. It is a very fine thing if it gives us perfect health whereby we express God in a perfect way. Isn't that so? So yoga means union of our consciousness within us with the divine consciousness. Yoga means union. And so those yogic practices which enable the body, mind, and soul to attain union with the divinity within us, those practices will give us perfect health. That's why the practices of yoga are so important, because they help us, aid us to express the presence of God within us through the body, through the mind, and through the soul. So remember what perfect health is. Perfect health means the expression of God through you, your body, your mind, and soul. The expression of the divinity within you. Isn't that a good definition of health? Not just a healthy body. What if you have a healthy body and you have the ignorance of the soul? Or your mind is not up to par? It must be all around health. Body, mind, and soul. Now let us take up first the body. I won't keep you very long this morning, but just a few words. First about the body. What is bodily health? Big muscles do not constitute bodily health. We had a boy at Mount Washington. He's gone now. He had such big muscles way out. Big legs, big muscles, he couldn't do anything. So what good was he? He had great big muscles. He was healthy as far as the size of his muscles went, but his trouble was he couldn't work because his muscles were so big. He couldn't flex his arm any more than that. What good is that? That's not real health. This was a fact. He had such a development of his muscular system that he was useless as far as work went. So, bodily health means that the life force, remember it's the life force in you, that is the key as to bodily health, mental health, and soul health. And so bodily health means that there is a harmonious flow of life force through not only the muscular tissue, but through all tissue. Nerves, muscles, organs, brain tissue. That flow of life force must be in a harmonious way, giving you perfect health in all tissues, not only in the muscles. Now, this has been shown to me years ago when there was an epidemic of influenza back east. And those who survived were not the big rounded people with the big muscles, big bodies. They were the thin, angular people. So do not think that when you're nice and big and plump and nice muscles and everything, that means that you have all-around health. No. It must be, remember, the body, mind, and soul. Now, to attain perfect health through yoga, the great Patanjali has given us the 8 steps of yoga. And just to briefly elucidate, we have the do's and the don'ts, which constitute the first steps. I won't go into them at length. You know the certain things you must do. You must be honest. You must be upright. You must read scriptural literature, and you must meditate on such things. Those are the do's. And the don'ts, you must not be dishonest, nor lie, nor cheat, and all those things. Those are the do's and don'ts of yoga. And until you have done those two things, you cannot take another step, so to speak, on the rest of the steps of yoga. Next comes asana and the master's recharging exercises. They have to do with life force. Asanas are the postures, and also the rejuvenation exercises of the master have certain postures, and the life force is the key to the asanas and the recharging exercises of the master. Then the next step is pranayama. Fourth step, pranayama, which means simply the control of life force, or prana. Yama means control, prana, life force. Control of life force or prana. Now, you do that. In attaining bodily health, if you do it successfully, you will have bodily health. If you control the prana in mental activity, you will have mental health, and it is absolutely necessary to control the life force in the body, the prana, to attain soul realization or soul health. After pranayama comes pratyahara, which simply means interiorization of the life force. If your life force is always out throughout your body and sensation, how will you know God within? How will you have mental efficiency? And above all, how will you dispel the ignorance of the soul unless you interiorize the life force and consciousness? They go together. And so that step is very important. And the last three steps, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, simply means that the life force is first concentrated on one thing, controlled on one point, and that point is the presence of God within you. Then, secondly, you merge in that presence of God within you, and then you expand it into the cosmic aspect of God. So there you have, in a few brief words, the 8 steps of Patanjali Yoga, so necessary for perfect health. And you can see they deal with the body, mind, and the soul. Now let us take up just for a moment the do's and the don'ts, very briefly, as per bodily health. Obey the health laws. Obey the health laws constitute the do. And the other, the don'ts, is simply do not break the health laws. Just to give you one illustration or so, greed. Greed, for instance. Greed loads up the circulatory system with carbon and toxins. And then those carbons, that carbon and toxins settle in the weak places in our body, as the nasal membrane, the bronchial membrane, and the lungs. And we have what's known as cold. The function of the body is impaired by not obeying the laws which say, do not be greedy. Do not have greed. So that's an important thing as to the don'ts in bodily health. And then going on just a bit, we have lack of exercise. If you do not exercise, you do not oxygenate the blood, and therefore you cannot get rid of the carbon as carbon dioxide. And the same thing happens as in colds and influenza and such things. So it is very important. Another thing that comes to my mind is, do not be overindulgent in anything, not only eating and greed, but all walks of life. Be temperate, have self-control. Another thing that comes into my mind as one of the don'ts, watch the sex, do not overindulge, because the overindulgence of sex has a great effect on depleting the nervous system. And if a person has a strong nervous system, they are bound to have good bodily health. And so remember, sex is very important. Be moderate, control it. And the worst of it is, in the end, it takes all the happiness, because overindulgence of sex unites you with the bodily consciousness, and there's no happiness in bodily consciousness. The happiness is in the soul. So with those few words about the do's and the don'ts, let us go on now to the next important part, which is the asanas, and the master's recharging exercises. Remember, here we control the life force. That's very important. And when you exercise, recharge the muscles, you control the life force. When you sit in the different postures, as Hugh Kabashian teaches Saturday nights here, won't you stand up? You'll let them see you. Stand up just a minute. Here's your teacher. Those of you gentlemen who want to come to the Ashna class Saturday nights, come, because he knows what he's talking about. And these postures place your body and spine and parts of the body in the right position whereby the life force flows properly, and you have better bodily health. And so remember, in the postures and the recharging exercises, we control the life force. And remember, the spine is the greatest thing. The spine must be straight. And these different postures, asanas, keep the spine straight. And the recharging exercises cause the life force to flow in the right way to produce and give you bodily health. Patanjali has said, one thing to remember, any comfortable position with the spine straight is the right posture to go on with the remaining steps of Patanjali Yoga. So we come to pranayama, which is life force, pranayama, control of life force, and this is important. This comes under now health of the mind. Health of the mind is taken care of in these two steps of Patanjali Yoga, pranayama and pratyahara. Pranayama, control of the life force, or prana, pratyahara, interiorization of it. Now, the whole trouble with mental health is uncontrolled thought processes. Uncontrolled thought processes is the greatest offender. And we have in Patanjali Yoga, as given by Self-Realization Fellowship, in which is included these two steps of Patanjali Yoga, the greatest technique to give you concentration, whereby you can control the thought processes. If you have ill health of the mind, it is because you are not controlling the thought processes. They're controlling you. They're running away with you. You're not controlling your thoughts. If you want to one-point your thought to the exclusion of every other difficulty, can you do it? You can through yoga. You can through Self-Realization Fellowship Yoga. We have to control the waves of the mind. And this is done. This is done by the highest technique of concentration yoga. And Self-Realization has that. The highest technique of concentration yoga. When you can concentrate the mind, one-pointed, then you can keep the pattern in the mind right. And if the pattern in your mind is right, then your body will be healthy, because it is that pattern in the mind which has a great influence upon bodily health. So remember, yoga can help you to attain mind health through its technique, the highest technique of concentration. Because unless you can control the thought processes in your mind, how can you have a healthy mind, let alone a body? With a mind racing here and there, running here and there, jittery, the body gets jittery too. Because the mind, remember, controls the body through the pattern which you keep in the mind. Keep the pattern right. And remember that concentration yoga, which you receive in Self-Realization Fellowship, will help you to keep the pattern right. If you believe that you're going to be healthy and stay healthy and stick to it, you will be healthy. Because it is the thought which controls the body. And if you keep the pattern right, if you keep the pattern right in your mind, then the forces of nature will flow harmoniously, and your body will be healthy. Your mind must be healthy first to have the body healthy. The pattern must be right. Keep the pattern right in the mind. Remember, thought is what has produced your body, and thought is what sustains it. The thought of God has produced your body. This is His thought, and His thought sustains it. Now all we have to do is keep that pattern right. God has made the pattern. What we have to do is sustain the pattern, keep it right. Now I will not go into the principle of how this works, how the thought controls the body, but just to say this, that everything is produced from the one light of God. Now, if the pattern in the thoughttrons are right, those are the very fine particles of prana, life force. If that pattern is right, then following through the photons, the protons, the electrons, the atoms, the molecules, and the cells and the tissue, following down through there, they will be harmoniously made and taken care of and sustained through the electromagnetic laws. So that's the way we are created, that's the way we are sustained. The key is to keep the pattern right, is it not? The pattern in your thought. Thoughttrons, as the Master calls them. So in a few words, that's the principle of how bodily health is attained and maintained through the principle that I've just spoken. Now, strong thought. Strong thought can materialize anything. Remember that. Strong thought can materialize anything. If the cells of your body are laying down on the job, have become somatic cells, fixed cells, you can arouse them, reawaken them by the power of thought. They can become once more active cells and sustain you. But you have to couple your will with God's will to do it. And when you do that, remember the power of thought is tremendous. The power of thought can do anything if you couple your will with God's will. Now, a few suggestions as we go along. Always feel, as the Master said, always feel healthy and strong. Never say, as he used to say, I'm tired. Never say that. You can say, I need rest. That seems to be all right. But don't say, I'm tired. Why? Because it suggests to your mind right off. And that mind is the worst thing. It picks up the suggestions. And the first thing you know, it'll be suggesting to you, and you will be good and tired. And it is not good, remember this, to go to others and say, you don't look good today. Boy, you look bad. That's the worst thing you can do. If they look bad, forget it. Just say everything is fine. Say anything but that. Because their mind will take that. The subconsciousness will take that and will suggest to them, and unless you are very, very strong, extremely strong, it will suggest, and you will pick it up, and you will be sick. The Master, I've heard him say many times to the ladies who attended him, don't suggest to me, don't suggest to me. So strong is the power of suggestion. So the next time you see a person doesn't look well, don't say, you look terrible. Something the matter with you. That's bad. Lift them up. Give a good suggestion or keep quiet. And they'll come out of it all right. So remember that. Remember that suggestion is a tremendous thing, and we must not give the wrong suggestions. There used to be a man come to my office. I like to tell this story. It's a true story, and it really illustrates the point of suggestion. He used to come to my office, and when he came in, if you weren't sick, you would be sick by the time he went out. He came in, how are you, Mr. His name was Jones. How are you, Mr. Jones? Terrible. Doctor, I feel terrible. And honest, I had hard work myself to keep above his suggestion. And so we must remember these few suggestions. Do not suggest those things to yourself nor others. Get out of the mental rut of ill health, such as he had. The minute he opened his mouth, I felt sick. And as he kept on, I knew I was sick. By the time I got him out, I felt relieved. So don't be like that. Suggestion is a very powerful force. Get out of thought environment, get out of the mental rut, and don't let your body run you, you run it. But it takes a strong mental mind. And remember, you can have that mental health through the right yoga, especially the yoga which you receive from Self-Realization Fellowship. And now we pass on to soul health, if we can call it that, soul health. Soul health, and this can be attained through yoga. Now, perfect soul health is what? Perfect soul health. Is that freedom? Perfect freedom of the soul. Freedom from ignorance and delusion, which is attained by God realization. So remember, if you want soul health, which is the most important thing, attain God contact. Attain God communion. That's the greatest thing. That will remove all delusion. give you the freedom of the soul. Now, yoga gives a technique. SRF yoga, which is Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga, I meant to explain in the beginning, takes the best of all yoga systems and incorporates it in its teachings. So, SRF Yoga is Raja Yoga. Now, there is a technique of Raja Yoga in the self-realization teachings known as the highest technique of meditation. The highest technique of meditation takes you, without fail, into the presence of God in you as the holy vibration, the Holy Ghost. And then Kriya Yoga, the king of all yogas, the fastest accelerator known to man. After you are in the presence of God, Kriya Yoga will give you the realization of that Holy Ghost, emerging in that Holy Ghost. And you will realize that you are not the body. You will realize that you are not this changeable mind. You will realize that there is a consciousness within you, the presence of God, which is unchanging, ever youthful, ageless, having never been born, never will die. Kriya Yoga will give you that realization of the presence of God within you. It will give you God realization. Don't you think yoga is important for health? Remember, Kriya Yoga will give you God contact, whereby you will have the freedom of the soul, which is your birthright, and the freedom from ignorance, the greatest sin. Ignorance is the greatest sin because it prevents us from knowing that God is in us and that we are children of Him, one with Him. And so yoga plays a very important part. And in conclusion, we can readily see that the greatest factor for perfect health is union with God through yoga. That's the greatest factor. I don't care whether it's bodily health, mental health, or soul health. The greatest factor is to know God, be one with Him. Why? Because when you have that God contact, you can be calm and peaceful in His presence. Nothing can disturb you. Nothing can disturb the harmonious flow of nature's forces through your body to keep it healthy and well if you have God contact. If you have God contact, you perceive His great light at the Christ Center, and you perceive His love in that light. That's what God contact will give to you, and Kriya Yoga will give you that, will give you God contact. And if you have that God communion and are one with Him, there is no death. There is no death for you, because you have superseded your outward waking consciousness by that eternal, unending consciousness of God the Father in you. You have lifted your consciousness from worldly consciousness to the eternal, unchanging consciousness of the presence of God. You have lifted up the Son of Man, and you have become a son of God. That's what God communion will do for you through yoga. These are real and wonderful things. And also, by God communion, you attain a great faith, a great steadfastness. Nothing can shake it. Why? If God is with you, who can be against you? Who can be against you when you feel God is with you? That's the greatest thing which God communion gives you. Now, having attained this steadiness, steadfastness, having attained this union with God through yoga, then you can see that the forces of nature, of Divine Mother, can flow harmoniously through you as body, mind, and soul, and give you perfect health. And so, through yoga, we can attain oneness with God, God realization, oneness with the Supreme One of the universe, God the Father. And having that, perfect health is a natural sequence. Perfect health of body, mind, and soul, and with it, peace and joy. of God's presence.